Well, welcome to the Career Corners of the Children's Groundwater Festival. It takes a lot of people to make sure that our water is clean drinking water and that once we've used that water that it gets flushed down the toilet, and sometimes we need to make sure that that's all taken care of and cleaned as well. There's a number of dedicated people working in the water industry, and we're going to take a few minutes to hear some of their stories. And today we have with us Andrea. Welcome, Andrea, to the Waterloo Wellington Children's Groundwater Festival. And thanks for joining today and sharing your story and what your job is in water. So I'd like to have you start and tell us a little bit more about your job title and what might a typical day be like for you in your water job.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is really exciting. I'm always excited to share what I do. It's a passion of mine, which is water. And so I'm an assistant professor at the University of Waterloo. I'm in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. And my job as an assistant professor is predominantly teaching students at the university about water and getting them ready for their careers in water, and also doing research about water, studying it. And so I focus mostly on groundwater, but also on what we call groundwater surface water interactions. So if you go outside and see a stream that's running in your backyard or in a park, it doesn't just hang out there by itself. It's connected to the ground. It's connected to the water in our subsurface. And so a lot of what I do is study how those are connected, because different things affect them both, like what's inside of it, whether it's contaminated or not, or how much is actually going to be there. So a typical day for me right now, since we're doing this interview in Zoom, of course, is not what a typical day would be in most other years. So right now it's a lot of Zoom meetings. In normal, it would be meeting with my students. So I have students who are doing various different degrees with me at the university. Some of them are doing research. Some of them are just going through their courses. So whether I'm teaching them in a course, I'm meeting them and helping them with assignments, kind of like teachers do in high school and elementary school. And then I also have students who I'm helping through their research. And so that's where I'm guiding them in discovering, their new little bit about water. And when I do my own research, the students are part of it, but it is really involved, like I said before, this groundwater surface water interactions. And for the most part, I do all of this on computers. And I don't spend a lot of time going out into nature for my job and collecting data or taking measurements. But what I do is I use and I make computer codes that will simulate this, that will say if it rains in a certain area, how much of that water goes into the ground and replenishes our aquifers, replenishes those storages of water under our feet, or how much runs off and ends up into our stream. To do this research, there's really three main parts of my job. And the first one is this research isn't free. I have to go and find people who will give me money to do it. And so that involves writing proposals. So my job is not just doing science, but being able to write and to express what I want to do. Then if I find someone to give me money, I get to actually do the research. So whether that's going out and collecting some field data that I do sometimes, or writing different codes, or using different software. And then the last bit is communicating that. So when I find something new and interesting, I go and I write papers that we publish to show other researchers, or I go and I give presentations, or I come to things like this to talk about my research. So that's the main parts of my job.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. So it sounds like you need a love of water and an understanding of some technology behind it to bring it together, which our next question was, how's your job connected with water? And I think that you answered that already with the connection that you made to that it's not just groundwater, it's the interaction between groundwater and surface water. So on our groundwater day, that's pretty impressive. What do you like most about your job?
I really love two main components of my job. And so that's actually why I ended up. So as a university professor, I've only been in this role for a couple of years. Before this, I worked as a scientist for a government agency in the United States, in the state of Kansas, one that most people don't know where it is, but it's right in the middle of the country. And the two components I like is I love the research. I'm really curious. I want to know more. I want to figure it out. I love writing software and code and making it do and write in these simulations. But I also really like teaching. And so my other job with the government agency was a little less involved with students and with trying to teach it, and it was more with research. And so the component that I really like about my job now is I get to do the teaching. I get to teach courses on water and methods that we look at water and analyze water. And I get to interact with my graduate students and help guide them in their research and their proposal writing and their thesis writing. So that's the two parts that I really like, is being able to satisfy my inner curiosity and also trying to engage other people and get them excited about the same stuff that I am.
Well, I think you have a whole audience out there that's going to get very excited about water. Are there any cool tools that you get to work with during your job? And you know, if you do, what might you be using them for?
So, as I said, I don't tend to do a lot of what we call field work, so going out and collecting measurements. But when I do, one of my favorite tools to use is what we call an infrared camera. And so this is a camera that, rather than your phone, or if you're older like me, your camera, that takes a picture of what you see, an infrared camera takes a picture of the temperature of everything. And so if you take a picture of a group of people standing outside in a forest, if it's, you know, sort of fall or spring, what you'll see is our skin is really hot and the ground tends to be cooler. Our clothes are even colder than our skin because it's connected sort of to the atmosphere. And so you see these images. What I use that for is, since I'm interested in this groundwater surface water interactions, if I take a picture of, say, a stream or a stream bank or a lake, we can see if there's temperature differences between our groundwater and our surface water, which there is a lot of time. I can see where that water is coming in. So a quick example is, if it's the winter time, the surface water, if it's not frozen, is cold, right? It's connected to the cold air around us. But our groundwater is under our feet and it's insulated a bit, right? It's like imagining, you know, you dig a hole in the ground and you live in that cave as opposed to out in the air. It's a little bit warmer in there. So our groundwater stays warmer. So if I take this infrared camera and take a look, and I see areas where the water, the stream bank or areas of the stream are warmer than others, I can tell that that is where I'm having that groundwater surface water interaction. What I do most of the time is write code. And so the tool I love is AnyCoding. And so that is, I use Fortran, which is a very old one, but also R and Python and any coding language where you get to basically tell the computer what to do and to run these simulations, I find to be really exciting.
Yes, yes. That I think has an interest for a whole bunch of our audience, whether they're science lovers or a computer and the coding part, which is really important as well. So what training or what education did you have before coming to the job that you now have?
Yeah, so I typically, to work as a professor at a university, you need to get your PhD. So I did finished my high school degree. I did an undergrad degree in engineering, and then I did a master's degree, which is sort of your first level of graduate degrees. And then I did a PhD. So you typically need to get a PhD. As I mentioned, I then went and worked for a government agency for a little bit before I had this position. Some people go and work for other researchers at universities, and that's just a good way to try to learn not only how to do the research and manage your own projects, but also get some involvement with teaching students and helping them with their research.
So definitely a love of learning. What inspired you or helped you to decide that this was what you wanted to do today?
So I'm originally from Northern Ontario, a couple hours north of North Bay. And so I grew up on the side of a big lake, surrounded by trees, surrounded by rocks, and also surrounded by a lot of forestry and a lot of mining. So a lot of things that use our earth and use our water to allow us to have the quality of life that we have, to allow us to have cars and build houses. And so it was pretty early on that I realized that I love nature. I love water. I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by how everything interacts, but that I'm also fascinated by how we use it and how we need to try to balance the two. I do want to go canoeing and kayaking and hiking and rock climbing, but I also want my car to get me there, and I want to live in a house that I can heat. And so how do we do both of those things? And so that's where I ended up really interested in something that brings it all together, which is water. And a lot of my research is not only looking at this groundwater surface water interaction, but how can we manage it so that we can go hiking and make sure that we can take care of all of the animals and the ecosystems that water supports, but also support the other things that we've now become dependent on.
Great, thank you. Do you have any other final words that you want to share with our audience?
I guess my only final words are just, make sure you stay curious, make sure you pay attention to stuff around you, ask questions, take opportunities to understand if there's something you really enjoy, ask more questions about it. You will find more careers are out there than you'll ever hear about in school or see on television. And that if there's something that you enjoy, like a corner of water or trees or anything, there is a whole bunch of different careers out there that you can pursue. And you can find something that you're truly excited about that can also help you pay your bills. Aside from staying curious, just make sure you stay safe right now.
Well, thank you, Andrea. I think that you gave us a nice snapshot of what you're doing at the University of Waterloo, and that your curiosity, your love of nature, and your love of coding led you, to a path that you have a job that is truly remarkable. And we thank you for, doing that, and the research that you do, and just understanding the interaction with groundwater and surface water is so fascinating and so important to us every day when we're using water. So on behalf of the Waterloo Wellington Children's Groundwater Festival, thank you for sharing your story today. I'm sure it will inspire some of our friends that are watching today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.